Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We're talking all about burnout and absence management with the wonderful Kelly Swingler. I'm Jenny from eDays and I'll just be sort of moderating and hiding in the background. There is a public chat open, so if you want to ask any questions, just pop them in there throughout, or alternatively we'll be doing a question session at the end, so you can always do that at the end. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Kelly.
Thanks very much, Jenny, and thank you to the eDays team for inviting me to spend the next probably kind of half an hour, just over half an hour with you all today, talking about something that is extremely close to my heart, and that is burnout. If any of you have heard me talk about this before, you will know that I can talk about it for hours, if not days. We are limited in the time that we've got today, and as Jenny said, if you have got questions or anything that you would like to answer or you want me to focus on, we'll get typing those in the chat and we'll do our very best to get those covered for you. I'm going to start by saying, as probably with most of us at the moment, I am working from home. I do have the dog in the background. The postman has been, I'm not expecting anything else, but if the dog suddenly starts barking in the background, I will do my very best to keep her quiet whilst I keep my focus and attention on all of you. And I'm also going to point out that today I am absolutely full of cold, which may seem quite hypocritical to be here. Again, if you've heard me talk before, you'll know that I focus a lot on well-being and taking time out for ourselves and boundaries and rest and all of those things. And here I am with you, full of cold, to talk about absence management and burnout. But there's a couple of things that I just want to start on that. Firstly, if I start coughing, choking, whatever, I've got all of my gear here. I'll just quickly mute and I will come back to you. But I think it's also important to note for all of us where in business with dealing with our people, there are a few things when it comes to presenteeism, the work environments that we are creating for our people, and the fact that some people will keep pushing on regardless. And I want to start with this today. I have worked in organizations whereby if you have no sickness absence all year, you will benefit from an extra day's holiday. And the extra day's holiday was announced at the end of the calendar year, and you were given a certificate and you were doing all this stuff. And I know the same happens in schools. My youngest stepson still gets it. If you get 100% attendance, you get these certificates and these lovely little badges. In my corporate days, I would push through, regardless of how ill I was feeling or regardless of what was wrong with me, to ensure that at the end of that calendar year, I would get a certificate and the extra day's holiday. And if you are a company or an employer that is doing that for your people, I would urge you to rethink it, because actually when we think about toxic workplaces and non-toxic workplaces, we need to think a lot about our practices. And if you are saying that one extra day's holiday is more important than the well-being of your people throughout the whole of the rest of the year, then that's something that needs to get looked at. And we'll talk about toxic workplaces in a few moments as we go through the presentation today. I would also encourage you to pay attention to the people that are showing up and that are fully being present when they really, really should be taking some time off. And again, as we go through this, we're not just going to be talking about sickness absence today, but I do think it's important to note. Pre-COVID, kind of 2019 and before, lots of people, myself included, were showing up to get the extra day's holiday at the end of the year when we really should have probably spent some time in bed, and we should have been resting and we should have been looking after ourselves. Since 2020, I think a lot of what happens is if people are testing and they are coming up as not having COVID, and yet they are still feeling like absolute death and wanting to curl up in their beds and wanting to have a duvet day, there is something that's shifted in our mentality that's saying, well, it's not COVID, so I must still be okay. And the measure that a lot of us are using is, if I'm still okay to work, then I'm okay to carry on. And again, I want you to be mindful of that as we go through today's conversation, and when you finish today's conversation and you're going back into the workplace, Because also, as we see in the news and the media, we're talking cost of living crisis. We're seeing companies, we're seeing lots of jobs and people being made redundant because their jobs are no longer in there. We are seeing people push through. We are seeing people struggling with cost of living crisis. We're seeing burnout numbers increasing on a weekly basis. And some of these things may cause your people to keep pushing and keep striving and maybe working extra hours to try and prove that they are worthy of maintaining their jobs and to try and prove that they can come through anything. And when I briefly share my story with you, I want to talk about why some of the top performers need to be the ones that you're looking at. I want to talk to you about why presenteeism is important to be looking at, and I want to talk to you about some of your working practices. But I want to start from there. I am full of cold. I'm not feeling 100%. I have the luxury of being able to say, this is what my diary looks like, and this is what I will do, and this is what I won't do. Many of your people may not be able to do the same. Many of them may not be able to switch off this afternoon like I can, but for me, it's important for us to be raising some of these topics as we go through. So I want to start there. Let's look at what else we're going to be covering. So we are going to be talking about what burnout is. We're going to be talking about why absence management is more than just managing sickness. We're going to talk about how managers can be ensuring that they play their part in reducing burnout. And we're going to be talking about, as I said, top performers and why actually, when it comes to absence management, your top performers may need a little bit more help than you and they realise. And I say this as a top performer, high achiever. I say this from personal experience through all of the research that I've done and with the very, very best of intentions. So let's start by talking about what is burnout. I don't know if I can see the chat function. If you're there and you're typing, what do you think burnout is? Feel free to type your comments away. Let me see what I can or can't say, but I'm interested if you have a view on what burnout is. So if you have thoughts or comments on there, feel free to start typing away in the chat. Now, from we've got some stuff coming through. I love this. Constantly stressed, exhaustion, feeling exhausted, extended period of stress and exhaustion. Some of you have been doing your homework, haven't you? Yes. So constantly stressed, exhaustion, feeling exhausted, extended periods of stress and exhaustion. Work and life stress becoming overwhelming. Yes. Stress and lack of perspective. Yes. Feeling drained. Okay. Keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. Because I think what's interesting when we talk about burnout, and again, particularly since we are seeing the numbers increasing on a daily basis. If you're in HR, type in the box, in the chat function, say yes if you are in HR. I've got some scary stats about how many of you are experiencing burnout in a moment. But actually, when we talk about burnout, the World Health Organization, this is the definition that the World Health Organization coined when they recognized burnout as a workplace phenomenon back in 2019. So they said that it's a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that's not been successfully managed, and it's characterized by 3 dimensions. So these feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's jobs or feeling of negativism or cynicism, and this reduced professional efficacy. Now, the World Health Organization, when they coined this in 2019, talked about it specifically as relating to the workplace. This was back in 2019. I myself experienced burnout in 2013, and speaking to the medical professionals that I began to work with then, actually burnout is a lot more than the workplace. We're seeing lots and lots of people for a variety of reasons experiencing burnout. But the bit that I particularly want to focus on here is this chronic stress. So it is prolonged periods of stress that we have been managing and overcoming for a very, 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 very long time. And if you were to Google like the impact of chronic workplace stress, you will get something like over 380 million results that come up. And chronic workplace stress, chronic stress full stop, can be seriously life-changing, life-ending. It can create very, very serious health conditions, from heart disease, heart conditions, mental health conditions, physical health conditions, lots and lots of things. Burnout itself is not a mental health condition, But when we are in this prolonged state of high chronic stress for a very, very long period of time, it can lead to mental health conditions. Burnout is not being ready for the weekend, just fatigue or exhaustion and like needing a holiday. It's not just stress. We need to understand, really, we all need a certain amount of stress to get us out of bed in the morning. If you were to look at athletes, whether it's, I don't know, football, boxing, golf, rugby, running, whatever it is that it may be from a sporting perspective, every single one of those athletes, particularly athletes at the top of their game, what they are doing, what they are training their minds and their bodies to do really is get themselves into a high stress state. Right? It's that high stress state that gets them over the finish line. It's that high stress state that allows them to compete at a very high level. We all need a certain amount of that stress. We need a certain amount of stress to get us out of bed in the morning. We need a certain amount of stress to kickstart our day. We need a certain amount of stress to help us achieve our goals, to achieve our objectives, to get ourselves in the shower, to get our meals cooked every day. And our stress levels can increase and will increase depending on how many stressors we have within our life on a daily basis. We can, for short periods of time, maintain levels of high stress. We can, for short periods of time, maintain very high stress. But it's when that is going on for a very, very long period of time, that's when it can become overwhelming. That's when we get ourselves into the point of burnout. And I see a lot of stuff on social media and within the workplaces where a lot of burnout seems to be, in many ways, seems to be like the latest buzzword. Right? When I was, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I first started my career in corporate, asking somebody how they were, like everyone was busy, right? Oh my God, like I'm so busy. And busy kind of became this thing of like how we greet each other. Like, hi, Jenny, how are you? Oh my God, like I'm so busy. How are you, Kelly? Oh my God, I'm so busy, right? That used to be the kind of greeting. We were successful if we were busy. We then moved from being busy to stressed, right? Throughout the kind of mid-2000s and into the kind of 2010s, everything was about stress. Like, how are you today, Jenny? Oh my God, like I'm so stressed. Oh my God, me too. And again, we come into this kind of greeting each other with these increased levels of stress. Because actually, if you're not stressed, you can't be successful. If you're not stressed, you're not working hard enough. If you're not stressed, you can't be doing everything in the way that you need to. And in a lot of cases, we've then replaced burnout. We've replaced the word burnout in those greetings. And I see the GIFs and the memes all over social media, like, show me your burnout level today, like show me your burnout in terms of gift, show me like how burnt out you are today. And it genuinely is not something that we should be taking lightly. As we've said, chronic workplace stress, this can lead to very, very serious health conditions, serious mental health conditions, financial stress, lots and lots of ways that it can impact us. And so we need to understand the severity of it. Now, the number one cause of burnout, according to all of the research that certainly I've been seeing for the last 10 years and beyond, the number one cause of burnout is toxic workplaces, sadly. And again, I think if there's something else that's linked to this though, and this is a term, is a phrase. Again, there's lots of research that's been done by this that talks to us about the fact that this is also linked to what we're calling moral injury. Moral injury. And since 2020, we've really seen three sectors whereby burnout has increased dramatically. And those three sectors include HR. HR have come out at pretty much top in terms of sectors that have been experiencing increases in burnout. We look at the medical profession and we look at the teaching profession. And if we look at HR, we look at the medical profession and we look at the teaching profession over the last 2 years, with lots of the things that we will have seen, maybe some of the unethical ways that people have been treated or spoken to or managed or dealt with. Maybe the fact that the money hasn't been provided where it needs to be provided. Maybe the fact that we just haven't had the funding or the support. Maybe some of the things that people are being expected to do the unrealistic things that people are expected to do. So again, when we're talking about toxic workplaces, if we link this to moral injury, where actually I'm seeing things that are unethical and immoral, and yet I'm still having to deal with them to do my job, to keep all of this stuff going, it's some of these cases that are causing burnout. And this is the number one reason. Now, again, it's not the only reason. This chronic stress, this workplace stress, can be happening for a number of different reasons, but typically, and more often than not, certainly again from my own experience and every single client that I work with who has reached this point of burnout, this toxic culture, these toxic workplaces, and this moral injury are pretty much top of that list. And again, there's lots and lots of research. If you're interested in that, I can get back to EJ's team. Some of the latest research that has proven some of this, an organisation called Softer Success have worked with a couple of different universities, and you can head over to the Softer Success website and you'll find all of the details and all of the information over there if you want to see those numbers in a little bit more detail. Okay, so toxic workplaces, we need to have a look at this. We then see that, again, some of these stats are telling us that 77% of us have experienced burnout. One of the most frightening figures that I've seen is 98% of HR at the point of burnout. So every single survey that is being done for HR perspective, 98% have said that they are at the point of burnout. Now, again, some of this may come to the fact that working non-stop throughout 2020, having to deal with everything as everything was coming forward, maybe having to make redundancies, dealing with working from home, not working from home, benefits, whatever it is that needed to look like, contractual changes, all of those sorts of things. But I also think from an HR perspective, and again, I say this having spent 20 odd years in HR myself, a lot of it, I think sometimes when it comes to HR, is HR tend to see themselves as separate to the rest of the organisation. When we're looking at employee well-being and everything that needs to take place in the organisation, it's like this is employee well-being and everything that we need to be doing for everybody else in the organisation. And here we sit as HR. And we're not getting the support that we need. We're not getting the coaching. We're not getting the resources. We're not getting the systems. We're not getting heard. We're not getting seen. We see all of this stuff. And actually, if HR become part of the people within the organisation, then we can very quickly start to eliminate some of this 98% that HR are experiencing burnout as it's happening at the moment. And so this is live data. We also see this number, which worries me, I have to say, for a lot of different reasons. We're seeing that 70% of execs are leaving roles to go to companies where there's less stress and more of a focus on well-being. And the reason that figure particularly worries me is that when we are talking about burnout and we are talking about well-being, if this is not being led and implemented from the very, very top team, from the execs that we have within our organizations, I then worry about the additional pressure that puts on the likes of HR teams and everybody else across the organization. Because if those at the very, very top of our organizations cannot ensure that our workplaces are safe and healthy and psychologically safe and not toxic, and where well-being is important and our people do matter, then I kind of wonder what else we can be putting in place to make that happen. So that number worries me quite a lot. From my own story, as I said, I've always been a high performer. I've always been a high achiever. I suppose joined the workplace in the late 90s. I was going to say late 80s. I didn't join in the late 80s at all. I joined in the late 90s. And I had always been a high achiever. I think with the management development training that I started, I was told that I wouldn't really be getting promotions. I wouldn't be getting pay rises until I'd completed these first 2 years in post. And I continued throughout my career to get promotions and pay rises. And I was a high performer in a lot of cases without even trying. I'm also hugely introverted, and a lot of workplaces didn't allow for that. I was very often the only woman at the table. I was also a working mum. I had my sons when I was 20. I was recruited as the UK's youngest HR director at 30. At 30, I was managing a team of 43 people in an organisation that was just over 3,500 people. And I was doing really well within my job. And then this moral injury began to happen around me, and I started to see things that shouldn't be happening, and I started to see things that I didn't believe in, and I started to see things that were immoral and unethical. And I began fighting harder and harder to try and ensure that the well-being, the full well-being of our people was being dealt with. One of the reasons, the biggest reason that I joined HR in the first place was because I genuinely wanted to change the world of work. And I realized at the point that I burnt out, for the last couple of years, really all I had been doing was writing strategies that the exec team weren't really paying any attention to, and sadly making people redundant. That had pretty much become my role. There were lots of other great stuff that was happening, but the majority of my role actually wasn't about changing the world of work and making the world of work better for people. It was about strategies that were being unread and creating lots and lots of change programs that ultimately would end up in lots and lots of redundancies. And the way in which a lot of that was being managed was wrong. But in the lead up to my burnout, I didn't see that there was an issue, and I was being present all of the time, right? I was showing up, I was being there, I wasn't taking my holiday, I wasn't taking any time off sick. And I wasn't even looking at that for any of my team, because actually we just all needed to keep on doing what we were doing to ensure that we were delivering for all of our people. And I'm sure many of you can also relate that to what it is that you talk about. So from a management perspective, from an HR perspective, if you are managing people, some of the things that you need to be focusing on are ensuring that your people have uninterrupted breaks. And again, I'm a huge advocate for flex working and full-day working. In my previous consultancy, I implemented full-day working for my team. They still do that. We implemented that back in January 2019. But a genuine uninterrupted break, not I know that you're on break and I'm really sorry, but could you just do this for me? I know that you're day off today and I'm really sorry, but could you just do this for me? I know that you're on holiday today and I'm really sorry, but could you just do this for me? Like, that has to stop. Because again, for me, that feeds into this toxic culture and some of this moral injury. Your people are allowed breaks. You are allowed breaks. Your well-being matters. Your well-being is important. So these uninterrupted breaks matter. And again, it could be that you've got systems or software or whatever it is that you're using to help you manage that. You also need to be promoting this time away to recharge. Again, there's research out there that shows the difference that happens to us mentally and physically when we take time out. And in taking time out, again, this is holidays. If none of your people are taking holidays throughout the year, why is that? Is it because they don't feel they can? Is it because they're worried if they do? Is it because the workload will double in the run up to their holiday and then they'll come back and it's just not worth the stress when they come back? I'd just rather be here all of the time. So again, you need to be looking at your working practices, and you can be looking at actually, when are your people booking leave? When are they not booking leave? And as a manager, starting to have those conversations with your people. I've noticed that you haven't taken any leave this year. It's really important that you do. Why is that? And if they're talking to you about stress or pressure or money or loads of stuff that they've got going on at home, have that conversation with them. Use the data, look at what is available for you on the system to inform some of those conversations that you are having with your people. And keep those checkups happening, because if you're not checking in with your people regularly and those stress levels start to increase and we start to get to the point that chronic stress is taking place, chronic stress is then more likely to encourage presenteeism and overworking and increase stress and over pushing and all of those sorts of things. And then ultimately you get to the point of burnout and you just cannot be there anymore. You cannot show up. You cannot function. You cannot think. Burnout will just knock you. And you think that you can keep going. Like, you don't know the day that's going to come where actually you just can't move anymore. My burnout nearly killed me. And I know many others that have been in that same situation. We need to be preempting it and preventing it as much as we can. And some of the data you can use to encourage the conversations. Through the conversations, hopefully you can create the change. And through the change, hopefully you can create the burnout. So the absence management is important. As we said, it's about holidays. It's about days off. If you're registering or logging break times or working hours or any of those things, use that data, use that information. Look at rest periods, look at days off, look at time off in lieu, look at holidays again, but also look at sickness absence. If you know that Kelly has had a really bad cold for the last 4 weeks and now her cough is getting significantly worse, but she's refusing to take any time off whatsoever, why is that happening? Why am I not booking my holidays? Why am I continuing to push harder and harder and harder? So you can use the data, use the information, use that to inform all of your decisions. And then when it comes to your top performers, we can be some of your trickiest people. If you are a top performer, if you are a high achiever, if you are an overachiever, you may find that some of this is what is present for you. But actually, for those of us that are high achievers and high performers, we don't really want to take the time off because, again, whether it's holidays, whether it's sickness absence, whether it's taking time back that we're owed, right? Even if we've been owed the time, we don't want to take it because actually we don't want to be seen as failure. We do want to keep delivering for you and for our colleagues. The fact that we are able to perform things at higher levels, and you look at us and think, well, give it to Kelly. What's that saying that I still hear so often in the corporate world, right? If you want something doing, give it to a busy person. Because if you give it to me as a top performer, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure that I deliver it for you. And then what do? Oh, Kelly keeps delivering. So let's give her even more. Let's give her even more, even more. And I then get to a point where I'm looking at it thinking, I cannot take any time off for the next 5 years because I've got all of this stuff to do. But I'll keep delivering. Because actually, that's the stuff that I find really important. And I love the challenge. And I thrive on work. I love working. It's a really important part of what I do and who I am. So I keep going and I keep pushing. But in the meantime, I'm not taking any time for myself. You need to be looking at that within your people. Because I will also have a really, really big fear of the consequences if the work is not done. I will worry about the bottom line. I'll be able to see the bigger picture. And I know the impact that the bigger picture will have. So I will continue to push. So if you do have the high achievers, if you are a high achiever, if you do have these high achievers in your team, we need more encouragement than some to take the time out to recharge, to keep us doing, to keep us going, to keep us being, and to get us to the point of preventing burnout. So use the systems to inform the discussions, or have the discussions and then use the data. But if you're worried about how you start to have those conversations in the first place, use the data to start some of those conversations. Encourage breaks, encourage holidays, encourage time out. Do not interrupt your people whilst they are taking breaks. Look at the working practices. Are you part of this toxic workplace solution? Are you allowing your people to take the time off? What systems can you use to support? And I'm going to leave you there. Hope that was helpful. If we've got questions, stick them in. Let me see what I can do. And then we'll go from there. And then I think we've got just a few minutes, I think, but we can go for this. I think we've got a couple now. So what are the warning signs? Louise is asking, what are the warning signs that people can take action before full burnout? If you Google anything about, there's lots and lots of people, there's lots of psychologists out there that talk about 12 signs of burnout, and they or 12 stages of burnout that they talk about. For me, I'm going to say it's quite difficult to pinpoint these are the 1, 2, 5, 12 things that you need to be looking at, because actually it could be, in women, it could be related to menopause. It could be related to stress. It could be related to depression. In some instances, actually, even some of the symptoms cross over a lot with kind of hypothyroidism. They cross over with a lot of different things. But for me personally, and what I see within my clients, the first is definitely around kind of headaches and energy levels. So more headaches, decreased energy levels. But within those decreased energy levels, actually what you then find for the person doing burnout is they want to continue to push more. So on less energy, they are working harder. And in terms of working harder, they then worry more about the consequences. So again, you might say something similar to kind of imposter syndrome. So actually, I'm feeling like a fraud. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to work longer. I'm going to push harder. But for me, they are the absolute common things. So starting with headaches, decreased energy, wanting to push harder and prove harder to try and prove my worth. They are the absolute top three that I've seen within myself, and every single client that I've ever worked with, and anybody that I know that has ever experienced burnout will say exactly the same three things. So they would definitely be the three. Again, there's lots and lots of, again, if you Google 12 stages of burnout, you'll see lots and lots of information on there. Again, speak to your people. You know, I cannot stress enough that a lot of this comes from the communication. And if you feel yourself that you are worried about burnout or you're experiencing any of that, I mean, on my website, I've got podcast, blogs, all sorts of, lots and lots of free resources on there. But again, you will find a lot of stuff. Google, I suppose it's one of those, isn't it? There's lots and lots of information out there. You need to find what works for you. Absolutely find what works for you. And then Lorraine, moral injury, bullying. Yeah, absolutely. So again, from this bullying perspective, those of you that can see the comments, bullying, absolutely. I mean, it's part of this toxic workplace and this moral injury. So yes, I can absolutely see that. If there are any other questions, take a look and or let me know what you would. Well, I've got one more actually. How can we support someone suffering from burnout? The biggest thing I would say to somebody that is suffering from burnout is absolutely encourage them to take time out. Whether that is through sickness, absence, whether that is holiday, but absolutely get them to take time out. A week off will not fix burnout. A holiday will not fix burnout. A spa day is not going to fix burnout. But we need to, once we're at that point, again, I mean, it's like so much mental and physical exhaustion and overload that you really don't know which way is up. And I think if you are at that point of burnout, you do need a break, whether it's holiday, whether it's through sickness, absence, whether it's, I don't know, some sort of sabbatical or something, but you do need to take that break. And during that break, I would absolutely encourage that there is some professional help involved, whether that has come from a GP, whether that's through a therapist, whether that's through somebody like myself, but absolutely encourage that they go to seek help. Burnout can have a really, really big impact on your self-esteem, on your confidence, just on your ability to get through every single day. And so I think, if we continue to just keep on going, we're only gonna make matters worse. If there is somebody that I would encourage them to absolutely take some time out and then get help from somebody that is able to help them come through the other side. I would also let them know that they need to be patient with themselves. A lot of the people that I work with can kind of feel that they are completely and utterly broken, that they're a complete and utter failure, because again, that's kind of the mind games that it plays with you. You're not a failure. You've just been going too hard for too long. You're not broken. You're exhausted and you are at the point of absolute and utter burnout, but you're not broken. And there is absolutely light at the end of the tunnel. So again, I would be encouraging them to be as patient with themselves as they possibly can in order to keep themselves going. Hope that has helped. We've got one more here. How can I help my business leaders and managers to really encourage reducing burnout? For me, again, that's got to start with workplaces. Like, what are the working practices that you have got within the organizations? If you can create healthy and safe working practices and a healthy and safe working environment for your people, that is the number one way that we can eliminate burnout. From an operational perspective, the things that I've mentioned, right? Talking to your people on a daily basis, having regular conversations with your people, ensuring that they feel safe and able to talk about anything, full stop. Then again, we want to ensure that we're looking at this absence perspective. Are they showing up just because they're worried that their career might be jeopardized if they don't do something? And again, I think actually from a manager perspective, first line managers, a lot of the research is telling us that first line managers are, in a lot of cases, the blocker when it comes to career progression, when it comes to people feeling valued, when it comes to people feeling communicated with. So again, if we can, as business leaders, ensure that all of our first line managers have the skills and resources available to them to ensure that they're supporting all of their people, including systems, communication, time out, responsibility, accountability, all of those things, making sure that we are creating that healthy and safe workplace that will make the big difference. I hope that's helped. Anything from anybody else? Jenny, anything else from you? If not, I'm going to leave it there for everybody.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you, Kelly. It's a really good session. I hope everyone else enjoyed that. We'll be sending out the recording and the slide deck afterwards. So if you wanted to watch it back or revisit any of the information that you've had today, then that'll be coming to you. We'll also be sending out all our future webinars, so keep an eye out for those. And we will be at the CIPD annual conference next week. So if anyone else is there, it'd be great if you want to come and say hi to us. We're on stand C52. Thank you, everyone.